I started Central. I thought I wanted to be a teacher. I taught math and language arts, mostly seventh grade students for a few years. And long story short, I decided I didn't want to do that forever and made the switch to becoming a developer. And I'm lucky enough to live in Minneapolis, so there are a lot of coding boot camps, is what they call them. So I spent a lot of money in 20 weeks to go through a boot camp. It was a full-time job plus homework hours, and couldn't do anything else with life. Just focusing on learning programming. At that time, I learned JavaScript mostly, and I mostly make full stack applications, so database to the web browser. And now, after all that, I am working as a developer in infrastructure and cloud services, just a fancy team within an insurance company called Travelers. But my day-to-day, and actually sitting right here is my work laptop because technically I'm working right now. I write Python programs for different people and different groups within the insurance company so that they can work and make their jobs easier.
You had said you're doing a spin-off on Python. You're not Python command line only kind of thing. You're doing something with a little bit of a higher level to it, and that you're not the biggest fan of it, but you want to talk about how Python integrates to the other types of stuff. Right now, we have been doing base level command line Python programming, and then we just last week moved into doing some graphical user interfaces or GUIs, and spelled GUI, Ethan too, and you are doing something different that then also integrates into some web development stuff. You want to talk about how Python can integrate into the different worlds, and then we'll kind of go into the question answer, I think.
Okay, yeah. So obviously when I started doing tutorials, I started with command line. That's the first and best way that I know to learn a new language. It's just the base of how does this language work. And the big thing that I would say on a daily basis that I use Python itself for is the logic. So I can make a website, do whatever, have a form, and display stuff, but I can't make it do anything with the information unless I had Python. So any calculations, any looping, I don't know where exactly you guys are at, but anything that I have to make any logic work is all Python. There's all this fancy framework called Django, and it makes everything display nice. But I guess the other thing that I do on a regular basis is, for me, and I would think probably for everybody, when you've got what you want to see on the screen for web apps and the logic that needs to happen, you need to see if your Python logic can do what you think it can do and figure out how to get all the information. So I'll go to the database and get the information that I need and then play with it and then put it onto the screen. So I can actually just run a shell environment right on my work machine where I can run just pure Python scripts and see if it'll do and get back what I want before I just throw it in and take the time to see if it displays on the web browser.
Okay, so and you had talked about as far as like where we're at, like I had mentioned, we started with the command line stuff. We went into some basic mathematical calculations. We did some calculator builds. Then we've done Python 1, 2, and 3 now. We've taken inputs and manipulated things based on strings, integers, and floats. The kids know the difference between global and local variables. We've played with variables, taken, like I said, input from users, we output to screen, and then we started utilizing the Google Sheets API to start playing with inputs and outputs to Google Sheets, and the kids have actually developed the Battleship game based on Python command line, user input, output, and then displaying the game board with Google Sheets. So that was, I think, one of the videos really that cool. I had sent you. So they've played with continuous looping, loop counters, We've done well true full nonstop looping. We've done loops based on just a countdown. And then now with the new GUI 0, with the continuous looping that happens with the graphical user interfaces based on user input. We're just starting to get with manipulating some of the variables based on the GUI and pushing buttons and doing some things. And we're now interfacing everything within the Raspberry Pi, so we have some real-world interactions as well. One thing we had talked about is the troubleshooting process and how you guys work together as a team. If you want to touch on some of that and how you work through things.
You want me, or do you want?
Yeah.
Just making sure. Yeah, so I'm kind of lucky enough that I'm the head of the specific app that I'm working on. But when a new feature comes in, the general process is I work with a customer and get some of the big picture things that they want. So to make it more concrete for you guys, an example, boring insurance stuff, but whatever. It's a form of these server jobs that have to run, and they need to be able to bulk add. They need to add 1,000 jobs at one time. So this is a feature I had to add to my app. So I worked with the people that would be using the app, as well as other people on my team, other engineers or programmers who know more about all the interconnected stuff, because it's a big, huge company. So I'm still new. I've only been here for a year and a few months. So they help me to think of things that I would never think of because I don't know. So for example, each job can have a different environment. So I have to code and do some Python logic to handle if the job has this or that or the other thing. And then I'll go through and I'll spend my time, I'll write my application, do my testing, and then we use GitHub, and I will do a PR, a pull request, and have one of my top engineers review it. So they look through every little piece of my code, and they scrutinize it, or they pull it apart and say, that will work, but it'll take 10 times as long as it should. You should do it this way, or you forgot this part of the code. And we just kind of have this back and forth of I try to do it and then give it to them, and they tell me what's good, what's bad, give it back, I change it, and then we connect with the customer, and then they approve it, and then it's all out there for them to use.
Great. And how do you deal with issues as you're writing your code and coming into problems when things are not working?
My first step is usually take a break, honestly, because I have a tendency to sit there and try to just push and be stubborn and say one more change and it'll work. I step away from the code just to clear my head. But then actually solving the problem is the debugger is usually the first thing that I go to. Make sure that everything that I think is happening the right way. And honestly, most of the time it's that I assumed that I was getting back a list, but actually I was getting back an object. And I shouldn't have made that assumption. So then I go through with the debugger, and if it's depending on the problem, after so many hours or days, I say, all right, I don't get it anymore. And I go back to my team and say, this is what I've tried. These are the errors that I'm getting. Can you help me solve this problem?
Okay. We've had some kind of similar situations where we're dealing with input and output with when we expect an integer and it comes in as strings, especially when we were playing with Google Sheets. It was real funky, but our command line debugger helped us with that. How do you guys do communications and comments on your code and kind of working through those things? Do you comment the crap out of it and then talk about it and do notes in your code, or how do you work through that, especially with dealing with all the higher level stuff you guys are doing?
Yeah, so kind of funny you asked that, because our team is in a transition of realizing that we need to document stuff a lot more than we do.
Documentation was my next question, yeah.
Yes, so I'm actually on a side team with my bigger team of, we need to document stuff better because we have stuff out there, but it's out of date and it doesn't make sense unless you wrote it. So trying to teach other people how to write documentation for someone that has no idea what it is to understand, because the documentation I find is stuff that it makes sense if you know what it is. So why'd you write that sentence? Who are you writing that sentence for? But what I try to do personally, because I write, oh, what's the phrase? I write code for my future self. So I expect that in 3 months, when I've been doing something else, if I come back to this code, I'm probably going to have no idea what it does without comments. And I've done that plenty of times, and we've got huge code bases, and I wish everyone else did that, but they don't. But for me personally, I try to, every big function, comment what it's doing, and especially if you have to write something that may be a little hacky, a little weird, and is kind of a workaround, always comment that. That is the one thing that my team is good at, is if it's some crazy thing that you would look at and say, there's no reason for you to be doing that, they do put a comment explaining why they did this thing that seems wrong. But with our code reviews and our pull requests, and once I have what I think and I send it out to them and they review it, there's a way on GitHub where you can just select the line, click on it, and then comment on just that line. So they'll pick the function definition, and they'll say, give me whatever kind of comment, and then I can go off of that comment. And then once we've decided on what the fix is, usually it's only a couple comments of understanding each other. Then once I make the change in the code, I push it back up to GitHub, and then it actually automatically resolves that comment and says, GitHub just knows that changed, so that's no longer a problem anymore. So that's kind of just the back and forth that we do with any big project, which is funny because I work away from the rest of my team. So in Minneapolis, it's just me and one other person, and then everybody else is in Hartford, Connecticut. So I don't really get the chance. Yeah, I don't think I told you that, Chris. So this whole working from home for quarantine is not much different for me because I just have to Skype or chat or message my coworkers anyway. So it's really just normal for me at this point to look to see if their little dot is available and say, hey, can you help me with this really quick? We do a video chat, share screens. I don't know what we would do if we couldn't share screens and just
yeah. Oh, locked up.
Normal for me.
There you go. Yeah, we do that a lot too, and we're dealing with a little bit more physical world stuff where you're all web-based. Do you do a lot of your comments in your coding, or do you have a separate notebook you use during the professional process, or how do you usually work through your games?
What I normally do is I like to mock out any big functions, so I'll start with just a list of comments of, all right, I need to do this, and then, all right, I need to do this in real English words just for myself, and then I replay, or underneath that, I'll do the code, and then once it's there, if it's obvious, then I delete it, because you don't want to say, loop through this list. Developers will know that you should loop through the list, and that's what's happening. And then I personally, and this is what I would like the rest of my team to do, that don't, is have a separate README markdown document where I go through and every feature that I put in with my PR, I explain what it does. Because no matter what, even if you're a developer and you look at the stuff every day, looking at the code and then knowing what's going to happen on the screen are two very different things. And you shouldn't have to run the application every time and then mess around with what information should I put into this silly form about insurance. We don't care about that. We care that the form takes the data and it puts it in the right spot. So I like to do just a second document that's right in with my PR, right in GitHub and everything that explains every bit with it.
Okay, so you keep a separate digital document as opposed to an actual physical notebook because everything you deal with is your team online.
Yeah, because paper for me, that's not going to help my team at all.
Yeah.
But I guess I do use paper for more problem solving. When it's something that I've spent hours on and I just need to stop looking at the code, I always have a notebook right there and I'll just, what am I trying to do now?
Yeah, I actually still have some of my notebooks from college from sitting in the labs trying to work through things. You just draw diagrams to figure out what you're going to do, and that's something I'm trying to teach the kids to get into that habit, so you keep some documentation of how you got to where you're at. I think that's great. Ethan, too, do you have some questions we want to go over? We'll go through everybody and see what kind of questions we have for Hailee.
So most of my questions have already been answered, but I have 2 questions left, really.
Okay.
So what insurance agency do you work for, or which ones?
It's Travelers. They mostly do
that's cool.
big business. Like they insure Lyft in some way. That's the other funny thing is I work for an insurance company called Travelers, but because I work for infrastructure and cloud services, I write applications for the people within the company. So on a regular basis, I honestly have no idea how the insurance part works because I don't touch any of that. I write, hey, how do I run this server job? And how do I send this document to this person in a secure way?
Got it. So a lot of internal workings and automation for the company. What else do you have, Ethan, too?
My other one was more of a programming question. So I was trying to figure out a way to have it take user input infinitely while running like an if too. Is there a way to make a program that takes user input, or even like just runs something that just checks if there's a user input at the time over and over again, so I can do something off the user input, and the user input constantly changes?
I think your goal there was to be able to use like the arrow keys or something like that to be able to do something, right? Yeah. We do have some libraries within like the Raspberry Pis that we're planning on doing, so we can do stuff like that. Do you do anything like that, Hailee, where you have continuous input that you're reading data, or is it usually just stop and wait for input? With our Raspberry Pis, we have special libraries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one application that kind of is similar. It's just the fact that people need to be able to see a screen that says this is on and this is off, so it is constantly looking for, has an open WebSocket is essentially what it is.
Okay.
That's what it's supposed to be, but there's things that don't always work with enterprise level. WebSocket, so it's always opening and listening for something. So I imagine it's possible. I don't know anything about Raspberry Pis. That's awesome that you guys are doing that. You're definitely ahead of me in that realm. But
yeah, you guys might like to know that she said she was pretty jealous of everything we've been working on.
I'm just writing web.
We're doing more fun stuff.
Forms, and mine is not so fun. But it's my career. And I make money.
Yes, money part's good. Are you doing any multi-threading with Python? We haven't gotten into threading because we're doing single threads on Python right now. Have you gotten into anything like that, or what's more industry standard is just single?
You shouldn't ask my team about what industry standard is. But no, I haven't personally done anything with multi-threading.
Okay. Just so all the rest of the kids know, the industry standard is kind of just like a phrase for this is what everybody does. It's the basic way to do it, so everybody understands how things work.
My team is a group of people who all like to do the things that they like to do and haven't had a manager for long enough. It's a whole thing. I could go on and on about my team. They're great. They're great to work with, but there's some crazy code.
That's kind of normal, and I guess in our world, that's what we just started doing group projects, and that's one of the things that's kind of a pain in the butt to do, but it's good for everybody to learn how to do that.
Definitely.
Ethan 1, what do you have, man?
Okay. So, first one, when did you learn Python?
Actually, so I went right from my boot camp. I had one small job, and then I started working at Travelers. So I've been there for a year and a few months, and the first thing that came up, there was a new big project. Said, hey, we want this new application to be in Python and Django. Go ahead and learn it. So I got paid to learn Python and Django by myself for the first month of working. And whenever I said, all right, I'm ready to start, they let me start, and I did it. So that was about a year, let's say, year and a few months ago.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then
So you just figured out your own stuff?
Yeah, I mean, they got me some Pluralsight and things like that, but from doing my boot camp, I have about 1 million different websites and YouTubers and everything that I use to help me learn new things. So I was just watching tutorials, reading docs, making silly little apps, and I was like, all right, good enough. Let me actually write code for the company. I was surprised how long. I think they would have let me go for months of just, hey, I'm still learning this.
Yeah. That's kind of what we've been doing, I think, for about 2 months-ish almost now. We've just been writing miscellaneous apps that I come up with for projects, and I think it's been fun. I don't know what they would say. Ethan 2, what else? Or Ethan 1, did you have another one?
so this is probably not gonna come to you, but do you know if they teach high school or Python in high school?
It just depends on the school. I would say, I guess, if you're in a bigger city with bigger schools, there's a chance, but I really doubt it. But that's where it's kind of interesting for you guys. I was thinking about that because, honestly, I wouldn't say you would need a coding boot camp by the time you were old enough to do one because you already have more basis. What you're doing right now is more than I had 2 years ago of any coding knowledge. I wasn't interested in any code before I decided to stop being a teacher. So
You didn't do any of that in college, did you?
no, I think I did. I did that.
I was the computer geek and you were
the
the math geek.
yes. I helped you with your math homework very often. That was
Yep.
good times.
Stats, that was a good time.
Yes. I don't know what I was saying. Put me down memory lane.
Well, as you just haven't been doing it for that long. So that was Ethan 2 and Ethan 1. I think Ethan 2, you're in 7th grade right now, correct?
Uh-huh.
What grade
Yeah,
are
so
you
are
in,
you guys
Ethan 1?
thinking about going
I'm in
to
6th grade.
Okay, so we got 6th and 7th.
Yeah.
Now I'm pretty sure West, one of the teachers, that you have an option to take that class. There is some Python stuff. And with my robotics high school team, that is C. It's actually Robot C. So once we convert into Robot C, that my goal for you guys during all of this stuff is we'll learn a bunch of stuff in Python, then we'll start learning some stuff in Robot C, and we'll start doing all kind of crazy stuff. So really, by the time they make it to high school, I think they should all know at least 3 programming languages. So
Yeah,
definitely
which
a
is
step above everyone.
which is honestly more than, I don't know how much I should say about computer science degrees, but in my
More
boot
than
camp,
most know.
in my boot camp, everybody in the boot camp that I went to had almost zero coding background. And they're coming from a different job, and they're adults saying, I want to change my career, I want to do something else. And we're also with different situations, there are events and meetups and groups and stuff where you would meet other people in the industry. So people that actually went to school and got a computer science degree. And a lot of them had less programming active knowledge and experience than us boot camp graduates did, because all we did was sit down, write code. We didn't learn any of the computer science stuff that was more like, if it came up, they would do a mini lesson on it or learn it on your own. But most of them were pretty upset, honestly. A couple of my met were a little salty, if I say, about
After
the
having a
fact
degree.
that I spent 20 weeks and I wrote multiple full stack applications, and they didn't learn enough of that. So I don't know where that leaves with computer science and already knowing multiple languages. But I know getting a job.
My goal is to get them to understand really just the basics of how syntax works and do the troubleshooting process and all these different things. And quite honestly, I think if they keep on with it, they could probably walk out of high school making at least $60,000 to start.
Yeah,
So
if they work hard and they have someone willing to hire. I think that's the only problem, is still being young. And I mean, a computer science degree wouldn't be a bad idea, obviously, because there's so many other things they teach you. So, like, I know somebody who was just like you guys, doing pretty much the same stuff that you guys are doing now at the same age, and went into computer science. So when it was, I guess, just honestly boring because he already knew how to code in the language, but he had to take the class. He would do everything like 10 times better and take it so many times farther. And the class was super easy, but it gave him the time to get the homework done quickly and then just do whatever side project that he wanted. So then on his resume, he was able to say, yes, I took this class, but hey, look at this project that I have. I did this other thing. So something to show on top of the degree.
Yeah, that's actually kind of what I did when I had to do, I think it was Microsoft.net. They were doing basic programs, so I asked him if I could just skip all that stuff and write a program to run a robot, and that's what I did to build almost the same thing that we're doing right now in .net.
Yeah. Usually they're really, really open with that. They're not going to hold you back and say, no, do addition when you can do pre-calculus.
Yeah.
Really what I think about it.
Hey, Ronan, what you got for us, man? And Ronan, you are 8 years old, and what grade are you in?
Third.
Third grade. All right, what kind of questions do you have, young man?
What was your favorite program that you wrote?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would have to say it's probably still my solo project from my boot camp. It was, how do I describe it? A meal planning recipe app, which is, again, kind of boring, but in my life, I always have a hard time having to grocery shop and plan meals, and we waste a lot of food. Like, I'll buy a bag of potatoes, and then we use it for one recipe, and then they go rotten in the cupboard and then stink everything up. So I made this application where you can upload, or actually I reached out to an API to get recipes, loaded them into, I try to not just say too many things. I can go on and on. Basically, in the application, you can look for a recipe and add it to, hey, I want to make it on Tuesday. I want to make it on Friday. And it was something I kind of used for a while, actually, in my real life. And then I kind of got this other job. And when you look at that code, it was the first real code I wrote. So it's not so great, but it works. I would say that's probably my favorite thing that I've created.
But you're proud of it.
Yes, I am very proud. I'm proud of my work stuff too, but it's a whole different kind of pride.
Yeah. What else do you have, Ronan? Ronan? That was it?
My only question.
Okay. If you think of anything, let us know. And Ronan is my elementary school kid, and his robotics team, they just got first place in the state for elementary from Michigan.
I didn't even know there were elementary robotics teams.
Yep, we have a good time. Yeah, we have first place, second place, and I think third place is the teams that we have on here right now. Let's see. Fourth place. Okay, Soren, you just talked. So what kind of questions, what do you have for Hailee?
Well, one of mine was already asked, but the other one was what's your favorite programming language?
Honestly, I would say Go. I haven't done anything with Go. It's Golang. I haven't done too much with it. I've just done a lot of learning and just your standard on my side time. There's a little bit in my team, but all the applications are just way out of my scope yet, so I've got a lot of learning to do on my own. But I would say Go is my favorite language.
Is that a spin-off of Python, or is that an entirely separate thing?
It's Google's Golang. It's
that's cool.
Yeah, little Gopher is their guy. That's
pretty cool.
All the new rage, so I gotta jump on the new bandwagon.
Yeah. Let's see, Elijah, what do you have for Hailee? And you are muted right now, because I see you guys were screwing around muting each other. All right, go, Elijah.
Is there anything you don't like working as a programmer for the insurance companies?
I've said a couple things already. Honestly, it's nothing to do with the programs. It's all people based. It's being able to work with people, and for me, it's people who have been doing this for years and years and years and years, and they believe that their way is best, and they're not willing for new things. But there's other people around to help manage that and see the in between. So I guess the only thing that I dislike is them not understanding that I haven't been doing this for a long time. So I'll ask a question and they give me a one-line answer. And I have a question about every word on that line. So it's hard to say, help more. Just some issues with that, but nothing to do with the actual programming. It's fun to be able to work with the actual customers. So because I'm on the inside, so I make the apps for the people in the company, I can just Skype message them and say, hey, can you take a look at this feature and see if you like it? And like, yeah, but could you move it over here, or can it do this? And I can just quickly get that feedback from them, as well as, 1 second, let me ask my top engineer if this is possible. And then he says yes, and then I tell them yes, and then I do it. And then they can use it. And then they say, yeah, it's great. Even though it's a silly button and a form, but that it feels nice to make things that other people are using.
Is it enjoyable doing what you're doing, or do you like your side projects to keep yourself engaged, or you ever get bored with programming?
I don't think I'd say I get bored with the programming part, because at least for right now, it's still, I've built a couple. Mostly what I've done is not really support other things that were there, because I was new and I was willing to learn all this new stuff. They're like, hey, you just take everything that's Python and Django and go. So I've built a few apps up at this point. And once the base thing is done, because it goes really fast, that's the way Django, this framework, works. Everything after that is complicated business logic. Like, oh, we need to add this job, but sometimes they can have the same names in different environments, and underscores and capitals and all this extra stuff that it seems like each day there's an extra layer. Is something that I've never done before. So then it's an extra challenge. Granted, in 5 years, if I'm still building the same form applications and I have no struggles or challenges, it'll probably get a little bit boring. But that's when I would focus more on side projects, and the boring part is the meetings and the paperwork and the meetings.
Got it. All right. Does anybody else have any questions? Elijah, did you have anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay. Any questions about work or school or anything? Sounds like pretty much it. Well, thank you very much, Hailee. I'm glad you could join us and give everybody an insight about the fun stuff that you get to do. We are going to go back to some of our programming stuff and start integrating more into our graphical user interface. Actually, Ethan, too, had brought up why do they call it GUI instead of GOOEY? Have you ever heard anybody spell it different? Isn't that what you said, Ethan, too?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's what I would think when someone just says it. Yep, yeah. There's a handful of things like that. Like, Django.
That's just the industry standard, right?
Yeah. Yep, you have acronyms that nobody remembers what they mean, and then you just say them how you feel.
Okay. Well, we are going to get back to work. Again, thank you very much, Hailee, for your time, and I'm sure you want to get back to work, or you don't want to get back to work, but you need to, either one.
Yeah.
Actually, one quick.
You said you have something else, Ethan, one?
How hard of a transition was it to go from your one job to this new one?
That's a good one. So the transition time was purely just, it was actually pretty easy because you couldn't think about anything else, because we were in a classroom learning and creating in my boot camp for 40 hours, and then we had homework every night and projects every weekend. So there was no time to really think about anything else. but it was actually really good for me. It was actually an easier transition than I would think, going from a teacher to a developer, because in this situation, at least, I'm in an office. I have to work with different people. So as a teacher, I had to work with students, parents, other teachers, and then principals. And as a developer, I have to work with coworkers, team members, managers, customers. So I already had some of those skills, being able to talk and work differently with different people. And yeah, I guess it really wasn't too hard. I did miss the buzz of a classroom. I would say that it got boring. Of usually I used to interact with 100+ people a day, and then sometimes I would interact with 2 people in a day if I'm just coding all day and there are no meetings. So, but the transition really wasn't too bad, especially because I made that choice. I knew what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it, and it was nice. It was refreshing in terms of being a teacher.
Nice. And that's one question that I forgot to ask is, how much do you think your high-end math background really helps you transition into doing the programming world as far as the logistics and everything there?
Yeah, so obviously not things like, I guess I got, what do you guys know, what level math? Not some like calculus level math. I'm not doing that in my programming, but being able to learn that and what math is really about, and what I always, when I was a math teacher, try to tell my students is about thinking and problem solving rather than putting these numbers, replacing here, and then getting an answer out. So the big thing that I took, and I'm really glad I do have the math major, because we went through some crazy math classes that only engineers for rockets and such use, but being able to think through and work together. So Coach and I, we did kind of the same things. We had a statistics class. I helped him, but he helped me as much, because just that act of talking through stuff and thinking about the logical aspects of math is what I can apply to this, because that's all it is here's a thing I have to do. I have some tools in my toolbox. How do I put that together and solve this problem?
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things that I've talked to them about is learning how to do this is less about actually just memorizing the code and more about figuring out the problem-solving process and how to deal with the issues that you find. But it's a fun time. Anyway.
Yep, you don't need to memorize the code.
I stole you for 40 minutes. What's that?
That's all right. I was just going to say, memorizing code, you don't need to do that.
Yeah, you always have references and copy-pastes.
Yep. All right. I look up how to do a one-line for loop most every time I have to do it in Python, because it's goofy. So don't be worried about trying to. I know a lot of math classes and other classes in school make you feel like you just have to memorize and know this thing. You rarely, if ever, have to do that. You know this thing exists once you get really good at Google, which is a skill. Some people in my boot camp put professional Googler on their resume, which I would not suggest. I would not suggest doing that. But you're really good. You know this language can do this thing. You just have to use Google to figure out how to do it and do that. Not copy and paste. No copying and pasting from the internet, but using those as resources, as examples.
Yeah, we actually have a Google Docs we've been working with a lot lately, so everybody has access to the same doc, and I put a lot of code on there, so it's just easy reference, so they don't have to try to memorize how to write an if statement or just basic things. But anyway, all right, well, I got you for 40 minutes, and we're going to get back into our GUI programming, and I'm sure you need to get back to work. But thanks again for joining us, and everybody says thank you and bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Hailee.
That's my camera.